First Contact Folly. Supreme Commander Vexthalan of the Corax Empire stood on the command deck of the dreadnought Inevitable Victory, his massive frame casting a shadow across the holographic display of a small blue-green planet. His four eyes narrowed as he studied the unremarkable world spinning slowly before him. Earth, the humans called it. How quaint. Is this truly worth our time, Science Director? Vexthalan's voice rumbled through the command deck, vibrations from his vocal sacs causing nearby instruments to tremble slightly. His chitinous exoskeleton gleamed under the ship's lights, the battle scars from 100 conquered worlds visible as pale marks across the midnight black carapace. Science Director Krillak's approach, her smaller frame barely reaching the commander's thorax. The preliminary data is intriguing, Supreme Commander. These humans are soft-bodied mammals, lacking any natural armor or significant biological weapons. Their gravity is merely 1.1 times standard, their atmosphere oxygen-rich, but otherwise unremarkable. Then why bring this to my attention? Vexthalan's mandibles clicked with irritation. The Empire conquers worthy opponents, not vermin. Krillax projected additional data onto the display. Their technological advancement curve is unprecedented. From primitive combustion engines to rudimentary space travel in less than 2 centuries. And their military doctrines. She hesitated. They're unusual. They've never unified, yet they've developed thousands of distinct combat methodologies. They primarily fight themselves. Vexthalan barked a laugh, startling the bridge crew. Self-predation. How pathetic. Civilized species outgrow such behavior once they achieve spaceflight. That's just it, Commander. They haven't outgrown it. They've perfected it. The Supreme Commander dismissed her concerns with a wave of his armored claw. Enough. We shall follow standard protocol. Deploy a single battle group to their largest military installations. Accept their surrender within a planetary rotation. Sir, I recommend. That will be all, Science Director. Vexthalan turned his back, signaling the end of discussion. Krillax lowered her head in submission, but her antennae twitched anxiously. As you command, Supreme Commander. Major General Rebecca Hayes squinted at the radar screen in NORAD's command center, the tension in the room thick enough to cut with a knife. Confirm that signature, she ordered, her voice calm despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. 27 years in the Air Force had taught her to keep her cool, especially when everything was going to hell. Confirmed, General. Objects in high Earth orbit, definitely not satellites or debris. Current count is 17 distinct vessels, largest approximately 2 kilometers in length. Hayes took a deep breath. First contact protocols had been established decades ago, but nobody really expected to use them. Alert the President and activate contingency scenario Omega. And get me the direct line to Moscow, Beijing, and the EU Defense Commission. Her aide, Captain Rodriguez, looked up from his station. General, the objects are changing position. They're descending into atmosphere. Multiple trajectories, targeting major military installations worldwide. Hayes felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. So they're not here to talk. Communication attempts on all frequencies have been ignored, Rodriguez confirmed. Hayes nodded grimly. Then we respond in kind. Implement ODIN protocol. Rodriguez paled. General, ODIN hasn't been field tested. The orbital defense grid is our best chance. Hayes finished for him. Activated. Now. Battle Commander Zex4 of the Corax 8th Expeditionary Force watched with satisfaction as his ships entered Earth's atmosphere, their shields easily dispersing the primitive projectiles the humans launched in desperation. Pitiful, he commented to his second-in-command. Their most advanced weapons can barely scratch our outer defensive screens. Sir, his tactical officer interrupted, we're detecting energy signatures from orbit. Unknown configuration. Zex4 dismissed the concern. Impossible. Our scans showed no orbital weapons platforms. At that moment, Blinding beams of concentrated energy lanced down from space, striking 3 of the Corax vessels simultaneously. The ship's shields flared brilliantly before collapsing, and the hulls beneath them began to melt. Impossible. Zex-4 roared, smashing his fist into the command console. What technology is this? Report. Sir, the humans appear to have concealed orbital platforms. They're using directed energy weapons. The tactical officer's voice contained a note of disbelief. The energy signatures suggest they're powered by fusion technology. Evasive maneuvers. Return fire. Zex-4 ordered, his mind reeling. How could these primitives possess such weapons? The intelligence briefing had indicated they were centuries away from such technology. More beams struck from orbit, disabling 2 more ships. The remaining vessels scattered, firing desperately at the now visible satellite network that had remained dormant until the Corax crossed into Earth's atmosphere. Sir, ground-based missile launches detected. Hundreds, thousands of launches from multiple continents. Zex-4 stared in disbelief at the tactical display. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were coordinating a global defense with a precision that should have been impossible for a fragmented species. This was prepared, he realized aloud. They've been expecting us, or something like us. His flagship shuddered as multiple impacts overwhelmed its shields. Warning alarms blared across the command deck. All vessels, retreat to high orbit, Zex-4 ordered. We must regroup and... A blinding flash engulfed his view screen as one of his escort ships erupted into fragments. Not from the orbital weapons, but from a swarm of primitive nuclear-tipped missiles that had somehow penetrated its defensive screens. Sir, our shield configurations are ineffective against their kinetic weapons. The dispersal fields are calibrated for energy weapons, not physical impacts. For the first time in his military career, Battle Commander Zex-4 felt something alien crawl through his thorax. Fear. In the White House Situation Room, President Elaine Martinez watched the battle unfold via satellite imagery, surrounded by her Joint Chiefs and scientific advisors. It worked, she breathed, scarcely believing what she was seeing. Project Artemis actually worked. The ODIN satellites caught them by surprise. Defense Secretary Wilson confirmed. And the coordinated missile strikes from our allies are overwhelming their defenses. They clearly expected us to be easy prey. Dr. Keller, the head of the Exobiology Defense Initiative, nodded gravely. We've had decades to prepare since we detected their communications at the edge of our solar system. Humanity may be divided politically, but we've been united in our defense planning. They're retreating, General Cho announced, studying the tactical display. 6 of their vessels destroyed, the rest pulling back to high orbit. They'll be back, Martinez said grimly. This was just their scouting party. We need to accelerate the Jupiter fleet deployment immediately. Secretary Wilson raised an eyebrow. Madam President, the international coalition ships are barely spaceworthy. The technology we reverse-engineered from the Mars crash is still experimental at best. It's all we have, Martinez replied. Humanity has been preparing for this moment since Roswell. We knew we weren't alone, and we knew not all visitors would come in peace. She stood, surveying the room of humanity's defenders. Ladies and gentlemen, we've won the first battle, but the war has just begun. Supreme Commander Vexthalon stared in cold fury at Battle Commander Zex-4's holographic image. You lost 6 warships to primitives. The Supreme Commander's voice was deadly quiet. Supreme Commander, with respect, our intelligence was fatally flawed, Zex-4 replied, managing to keep his voice steady despite his humiliation. The humans possessed technologies we were told they had not yet developed. Their orbital defense system was overlooked by incompetence. Vexthalon snarled. The Corax Empire has conquered 300 species across 12 galactic sectors. We have never retreated. We have never failed. Until today. Science Director Krillak stepped forward tentatively. Supreme Commander, I've analyzed the battle data. The humans used a fascinating strategy. They concealed their true technological capabilities, maintained a fractured appearance, while secretly unifying their defense protocols, and specifically targeted weaknesses in our shield configurations that they couldn't possibly have known about. Unless what, Director? Vexthalon demanded. Unless they've encountered our technology before, she finished quietly, and had time to study it. The command deck fell silent as the implications settled over them. Vexthalon's eyes narrowed to slits. Impossible. We would have records of prior contact. There was the scout ship that disappeared in this sector 3 of their decades ago, his strategic officer offered. The silent observer. It was presumed lost to a stellar event. The Supreme Commander circled the holographic display of Earth slowly, studying it with new respect and growing rage. So these humans have been preparing, learning our weaknesses, hiding their strength. His mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of dangerous excitement among the Corax. How interesting. He turned to his fleet commanders. Prepare the Dominion Armada. All of it. His strategic officer's exoskeleton paled. Supreme Commander, the entire Armada. For one primitive world. These primitives have bloodied the Corax for the first time in a millennium, Vexthalon said softly. They will learn the cost of such defiance. We will scorch their continents to ash, boil their oceans to vapor, and preserve only enough specimens to understand how they achieved this anomaly. He turned back to the hologram of Earth, his 4 eyes reflecting the blue-green glow of humanity's homeworld. And when we are finished, no species in the galaxy will dare resist the Corax again. The counterattack. Humans have never truly known peace. This thought occupied Dr. Elena Volkov's mind as she studied the alien technology spread across her laboratory deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. 6 months had passed since the failed Corax invasion. 6 months of feverish preparation for what everyone knew was coming next. How close are we? General Hayes asked, entering the secure laboratory without preamble. Elena didn't look up from the disassembled propulsion system. The reverse engineering is proceeding faster than expected. Having actual Corax technology to study, rather than just the fragments from the Roswell and Mars crashes, has accelerated our timeline significantly. Hayes approached the workstation, her face reflected in the polished alien metal. The deep space arrays have detected movement. A massive fleet assembling at the edge of our solar system. We have weeks, not months. Now Elena did look up, pushing her glasses back from where they'd slid down her nose. The Jupiter fleet will be ready. We've successfully integrated the Corax shield technology with our ships, and the phase shift drives are operational. And the weapon systems. Elena smiled thinly. That's where we've made the most progress. It turns out the Corax never developed certain branches of physics that humans explored extensively. Their technology is superior in many ways, but they have blind spots. Specifically, quantum entanglement applications and directed gravitational manipulation. In English, Doctor. We can hit them in ways they can't defend against because they've never encountered these attack vectors before. Elena picked up a small device that looked like an ordinary smartphone. This prototype can disrupt their neural networks at a distance. Their hive mind command structure is vulnerable. Hayes raised an eyebrow. They're what? The Corax aren't truly individual beings as we understand them, Elena explained. They maintain individual consciousness, but their strategic thinking is augmented by a quantum-linked network connecting officers to their troops. It's why they've been so formidable against other species. Perfect coordination. And you can disrupt this. We can do more than disrupt it, Elena said, her voice suddenly hard. We can poison it. Supreme Fleet Commander Drexthar stood on the command deck of the indomitable subjugation, the flagship of the Corax Dominion Armada. Around him, 5,000 warships prepared to enter Earth's solar system, the largest military force assembled in Corax history. Final tactical assessment, he ordered, his massive frame vibrating with anticipation. Strategic Overseer Krolvac approached, head bowed in deference. The human defenses are substantial, Supreme Fleet Commander. They have reinforced their orbital grid and positioned defensive platforms throughout their system. However, our overwhelming numbers will prevail. Simulations indicate total victory within 3 planetary rotations, with acceptable losses. Acceptable losses. Science Director Krillax interrupted, approaching with uncharacteristic boldness. May I remind the command that our acceptable losses from the first engagement were predicted at 0. Yet we lost 6 capital ships. Drexthar turned his 4 eyes toward her, mandibles clicking in irritation. You overstep, Science Director. I seek only to serve the Empire, she replied, lowering her gaze appropriately. But these humans have demonstrated capabilities beyond our predictions twice now. First, with their orbital defense grid, and second, with the discovery that they had previously obtained and studied our technology. Your concerns are noted, Drexthar said dismissively. But the full might of the Dominion cannot be resisted by primitives, regardless of what trinkets they've scavenged from our lost vessels. Krillax's antennae twitched anxiously. There is something else, Supreme Fleet Commander. My analysis of their communications suggests they are not merely defending their world. They speak of something called Operation Typhoon. It appears to be offensive in nature. Drexthar barked a laugh that startled the bridge crew. Offensive? Against us? What could they possibly? Fleet Commander, the sensor officer interrupted, voice sharp with alarm. Spatial distortions detected throughout the formation. Multiple signatures appearing from nowhere. The massive view screen shifted to show the impossible. Dozens, then hundreds of human vessels materializing within the Corax fleet formation, bypassing their defensive screens entirely. How? Drexthar roared. How did they penetrate our formation? Unknown, Fleet Commander. Their propulsion signature doesn't match anything in our database. They're using some form of spatial folding. Before Drexthar could respond, the human vessels opened fire, not with energy weapons or projectiles, but with devices that attached to Corax ships and then did nothing visible. Report. What are those devices? Scanning. They appear to be emitting a quantum field of some kind. No obvious weapon signature. Wait. The tactical officer's voice faltered. Fleet Commander, we're losing contact with affected vessels. Not destroyed. Just silent. Across the formation, Corax ships began behaving erratically, some firing on their own allies, others powering down completely, still others accelerating in random directions. Our neural network. Krillax gasped, understanding immediately. They're attacking our command structure directly. Drexthar stared in disbelief as his perfect formation dissolved into chaos. All vessels, sever neural connections. Revert to autonomous command protocols. But the order came too late. The carefully coordinated Corax fleet, dependent on their hive-mind tactical advantage for millennia, found themselves suddenly fighting as individuals against a human force that moved with unexpected unity. Admiral Hiroshi Tanaka of the Earth Defense Force watched the battle unfold from the bridge of the EDF Defiant, humanity's first true battleship. Around him, officers monitored the effectiveness of the quantum disruptors with professional calm that belied the historic nature of the moment. Operation Typhoon is proceeding beyond projected outcomes. Admiral, his XO reported. 80% of Corax vessels affected by the neural disruptors. Their formation has collapsed. Tanaka nodded, his weathered face betraying no emotion. And our losses. 17 ships destroyed, 33 damaged. Within acceptable parameters. Acceptable parameters. The phrase tasted bitter in Tanaka's mind. Each of those ships carried hundreds of men and women from Earth, but the alternative, allowing the Corax to reach Earth with their full armada, was unthinkable. The Corax are attempting to regroup at coordinates Delta 9, Tactical Officer Chen announced. Approximately 600 vessels still combat effective. Deploy Phase 2, Tanaka ordered, and open a channel to all Corax vessels. The communication officer worked her console. Channel open. Sir. Tanaka stood, straightening his uniform. This is Admiral Hiroshi Tanaka of the Earth Defense Force. Your invasion fleet has been neutralized. Your neural command network has been compromised. You have one opportunity to surrender and withdraw from Earth space permanently. The view screen flickered to life, showing the enraged face of a Corax commander, mandibles clicking furiously. This is Supreme Fleet Commander Drexthar of the Corax Dominion. We do not surrender. We do not retreat. Your primitive deception has bought you nothing but a more painful extinction. The Dominion will. Tanaka cut the transmission with a gesture. They've made their choice. Execute Phase 2. Throughout the chaotic battlefield, the remaining human ships activated their phase shift drives simultaneously, disappearing from conventional space. Before the Corax could react, they reappeared, each positioned directly alongside a Corax vessel, inside their defensive screens. What followed wasn't combat so much as execution. The human ships fired specialized weapons at point-blank range. Weapons designed specifically to penetrate Corax hull materials, targeting the vulnerabilities identified from studying the captured vessels. Within minutes, the remaining Corax combat force was reduced to drifting debris. All enemy ships neutralized, Admiral Chen reported, unable to keep a note of awe from her voice. The Corax invasion force has been eliminated. A heavy silence fell over the bridge. They had achieved what should have been impossible, defeating the most feared military force in known space. Send word to Earth, Tanaka said quietly. Operation Typhoon successful. And prepare the fleet for Phase 3. His XO looked up sharply. Sir, Phase 3 wasn't scheduled to begin for another month. The Corax will expect us to celebrate this victory, to focus on our defense, Tanaka replied. They won't expect us to immediately take the fight to them. His eyes hardened. Humanity has endured thousands of years of warfare against ourselves. We've perfected the art of conflict in ways these aliens can't comprehend. It's time they learned what happens when humans decide to become the predators. Science Director Krillak stood before the Corax Imperial Council, her small frame dwarfed by the massive chamber. The 24 council members glowered down at her from their elevated positions, their collective rage a palpable force. The entire Dominion Armada, High Counselor Vraxwool rumbled, his ancient voice echoing through the chamber. 5,000 vessels. 2 million warriors, destroyed by primitives. Krillax lowered her head. Not destroyed entirely, High Counselor. 317 vessels escaped. Supreme Fleet Commander Drexthar's flagship was among them. A meaningless distinction, another counselor hissed. This defeat is unprecedented in the history of our species. Explain how this happened, Science Director, or join those who have already been executed for this failure. Krillax activated a holographic display. The humans employed technologies we had not predicted. Their method of faster-than-light travel appears to operate on principles unknown to our science. They can apparently fold space itself, bypassing normal defensive formations. Impossible, a counselor interrupted. Such technology would require energy sources beyond what we thought possible for their development level. Krillax finished. Yes, that has been our fundamental error from the beginning. We have consistently underestimated these creatures. She advanced the display, showing the quantum disruptors. Most concerning was their attack on our neural network. They somehow identified the frequency patterns of our command structure and developed a weapon specifically to disrupt it. This suggests not only technological sophistication, but a deep understanding of Corax biology and psychology. High Counselor Vraxwool leaned forward. Are you suggesting infiltration? Espionage? I am suggesting something potentially more concerning. Krillax replied carefully. The humans may have developed predictive models of Corax behavior and technology based on limited samples. Their adaptability appears to exceed anything we have encountered in 12,000 cycles of conquest. Before the council could respond, an aide rushed into the chamber, a breach of protocol so severe that it momentarily silenced the counselors. Forgive the intrusion, the aide gasped, but our outer colonies are under attack. Multiple systems report human vessels appearing without warning. They're bypassing our defensive fleets entirely. The chamber erupted in shouts and commands. High Counselor Vraxul slammed his ceremonial staff against the floor, restoring order. "Impossible," he growled. "They cannot have reached our territory so quickly. They're using the same spatial folding technology they deployed against our Armada," Krillax explained, her antennae vibrating with excitement despite the dire news. "Distance means nothing to them. They can appear anywhere." "What are their objectives?" another counselor demanded. The aide projected a tactical display showing dozens of Corax worlds. "They're targeting our communication hubs, shipyards, and most concerning, they appear to be liberating our subjugated species. The Morellians, the Vox Collective, the Quantum Sim, they're all rising against our garrisons simultaneously." For the first time in the history of the Corax Imperial Council, silence, true silence, fell over the chamber as the implications became clear. "They're not just defending," Krillax whispered into the quiet. "They're dismantling our empire." The psychological edge. Vexthalon, once Supreme Commander and now War Crisis Director of the rapidly crumbling Corax Empire, studied the human prisoner with all four eyes. The creature sat calmly in its containment field, seemingly unconcerned by its captivity or the array of Corax scientists observing it. "I expected you to be larger," Vexthalon said finally, his translator converting his clicks and vibrations into the human's language. The prisoner, Captain Michael Chen of the Earth Defense Force, smiled slightly. "That's what all the Corax say. You understand what has happened to you." Vexthalon continued, circling the containment field slowly. "Your ship was disabled. Your crew is dead. You will never return to your homeworld." Chen's expression didn't change. "That's your assessment of the situation." The calm response irked Vexthalon. In his long career, he had interrogated thousands of captured enemies. All had shown appropriate fear when confronted by a Corax commander. This human displayed nothing recognizable. "You're not afraid," Vexthalon observed. "Should I be?" The directness of the question caught Vexthalon off guard. "You are the captive of the species your kind has recently provoked into war, a species that has conquered hundreds of worlds. Your life exists at my whim." Chen leaned forward slightly. "And yet your empire is falling apart around you. 300 of your colony worlds have declared independence in the past month. Your subjugated species are in open revolt. The Corax military has lost 40% of its combat capability." He tilted his head. "From where I'm sitting, it seems like you should be afraid of us." Vexthalon felt his rage rising but forced it down. This human was attempting to provoke him, a primitive psychological tactic. "What I don't understand," the War Crisis Director said instead, "is why. Why did humans attack our empire after successfully defending their world? You could have remained in your system, fortified against future conflict. Instead, you launched an unprovoked offensive against worlds thousands of light years from your territory." Chen laughed. Actually laughed, causing several of the observing scientists to flinch. "Unprovoked. You attempted to conquer our homeworld, our only world. You would have enslaved or exterminated our entire species. We didn't start this war, Director. We're just ending it more thoroughly than you expected. By destroying our empire. By ensuring you never threaten us again." Chen's eyes hardened. Humanity has learned through bitter experience that half measures in war lead to future conflicts. When we fight, we commit totally. Vexthalon's mandibles clicked in contemplation. The Corax have existed as conquerors for 12,000 years. We have subjugated hundreds of species, each believing they could resist us. All failed. What makes humans different? Perspective, Chen replied immediately. You evolved as apex predators on a world where you faced no meaningful competition. We evolved being hunted, then became hunters ourselves. You've never known true fear. We've lived with it since our beginning. One of the observing scientists stepped forward. War Crisis Director, if I may. Our analysis of human history supports the prisoner's claim. Unlike the Corax, who unified early and turned outward, humans spent millennia fighting themselves. They have experienced thousands of wars, developed countless military doctrines, weapons technologies, and psychological warfare techniques against opponents who thought exactly like them. They perfected warfare against themselves, Vexthalon mused. No, Chen corrected. We perfected adaptation. Corax military doctrine hasn't fundamentally changed in thousands of years because it never needed to. Humanity has reinvented warfare countless times because we had to. Vexthalon turned away from the containment field, his mind racing. What the human said made a disturbing kind of sense. The Corax had indeed relied on the same basic strategies for millennia: overwhelming force, biological intimidation, and neural network coordination. Those advantages had always been sufficient, until now. Take the prisoner back to its cell, he ordered. I've heard enough. As the guards moved to comply, Chen called after him. Director, you should know, I'm not actually a prisoner. Vexthalon turned back. Explain. I allowed myself to be captured, Chen said, his expression calm. You need to understand us if there's going to be any possibility of peace. I volunteered to be your educator. Peace, Vexthalon snarled. After what your kind has done to our empire, the alternative is extinction, Chen replied simply. Yours, not ours. Before Vexthalon could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. A security officer rushed into the chamber. War Crisis Director. Our systems are being infiltrated. Some kind of quantum-entangled virus is spreading through our networks, bypassing all security protocols. Impossible, Vexthalon growled. This facility is completely isolated from all external networks. Chen smiled. Remember what I said about adaptation. You should check my neural implants. They're not standard Earth Defense Force issue. Vexthalon spun to face the scientists. Scan him. Now. But it was too late. Throughout the facility, systems began shutting down. Containment fields, including Chen's, flickered and died. Security doors opened. What have you done? Vexthalon demanded. Opened a dialogue. Chen replied, standing up and stretching casually. In about 30 seconds, this entire facility will receive a direct transmission from Earth's Unified Command. I suggest you listen carefully to what they have to say. Admiral Helena Vostok, Supreme Commander of the Earth Expeditionary Force, stood before the holographic displays on the bridge of the EDF Retribution. Around her, officers monitored the ongoing operations across Corax space. Status report, she commanded. Phase 3 is proceeding ahead of schedule, Admiral, her strategic officer reported. 87% of former Corax vassals have declared independence. Our forces have disabled or destroyed 62% of remaining Corax military assets. Captain Chen's infiltration of the Corax Strategic Research Facility has been confirmed successful. Vostok nodded, her silver-streaked hair catching the light of the displays. And the homeworld defense grid. Their primary defense fleet has been drawn out by our feints in the Cygnus sector. The approach to Draxus Prime is currently defended by approximately 300 vessels, substantial but not insurmountable. And the Achilles Protocol. Her weapons officer tensed visibly. The gravitational disruptors are prepared, Admiral. If deployed against the Corax homeworld. He hesitated. The simulations indicate near-complete planetary devastation. Conservative estimates put Corax casualties at over 90% of their species. A heavy silence fell over the bridge. The Achilles Protocol represented humanity's ultimate weapon, devices that could disrupt a planet's gravitational field, effectively tearing it apart from the inside. Developed from the same principles as their phase shift drives, these weapons were beyond anything the Corax had ever encountered or could defend against. Let us hope it doesn't come to that, Vostok said quietly. Humanity didn't fight its way to the stars to become planet killers. She straightened her uniform. Prepare the fleet for the final approach to Draxus Prime, and open a channel to the Corax Imperial Council. High Counselor Vraxul, last of the ancient lineage that had ruled the Corax for 30 generations, stared at the holographic projection of the human admiral with a mixture of rage and disbelief. "You demand our unconditional surrender," he growled, his translator struggling to convey the depth of his outrage. "The Corax Empire has stood for 12 millennia. We have conquered hundreds of worlds. We will not be dictated to by soft-skinned primates who have barely left their own planet." The human admiral, Vostok, she had called herself, regarded him calmly. "High Counselor, this is not a negotiation. Your military has been systematically neutralized. Your vassal species have revolted. Your empire exists now only in name." "We will rebuild," Vraxul insisted. "We will endure. The Corax always endure." "Not this time," Vostok replied, her voice level. "Our fleet is approaching Draxus Prime as we speak. You have a choice to make, High Counselor. Surrender and survive as a species, or resist and face extinction." Vraxul slammed his ceremonial staff against the council chamber floor. "You threaten genocide, and you claim moral superiority over us." "We claim nothing except the right to exist without threat," Vostok answered. "You attacked our world. You would have enslaved or exterminated our species without hesitation. We responded by dismantling your ability to threaten others, not by exterminating your kind." She leaned closer to the projection. "But make no mistake, High Counselor, if forced to choose between your species and ours, we will ensure our survival. The weapons approaching your homeworld can tear Draxus Prime apart at its core. We developed them specifically for this confrontation, knowing what we faced." Science Director Krillak stepped forward. "Admiral Vostok speaks the truth, High Counselor. Our long-range sensors have detected their fleet. They carry devices unlike anything in our database. The energy signatures suggest gravitational manipulation on a planetary scale." Vraxul's exoskeleton paled slightly. "You would destroy an entire world. Billions of Corax." "We would prefer not to," Vostok replied. "Hence this conversation." The High Counselor looked around at his fellow council members, seeing the unthinkable in their postures: uncertainty, fear. For the first time in recorded Corax history, the Imperial Council faced the prospect of defeat. "What are your terms?" Vraxul asked, his voice barely audible. "The complete dismantling of the Corax Empire. Your species will retain Draxus Prime and its immediate colony worlds, but all conquered territories will be granted independence. Your military will be reduced to defensive capabilities only, and you will join the newly formed Galactic Cooperative, a coalition of species dedicated to mutual defense and advancement. You expect us to live as equals with species we once ruled?" Vraxul demanded incredulously. "I expect you to adapt," Vostok replied. "As we have. As all successful species must." The council chamber fell silent as the enormity of the moment settled over the gathered Corax leaders. 12,000 years of empire, of unquestioned dominance, now faced extinction. "We require time to consider these terms," Vraxul sighed.